Good morning, everyone. Hope you're all having a wonderful day today. Before we get started, if you want to, go ahead and like, share, subscribe, all that sort of good stuff. If you want to support the channel and anything else I do, help me buy more bullets, go ahead and check out some of the links in the description. But let's go ahead and talk about one of the most excellent optics, if not the most excellent budget optic that you can get. It's a low power variable zoom, which is pretty much my favorite style of optic, and that is of course the UTG. I believe it's the AccuShot. They're 1:8 by 28. Now let's go ahead and talk about a couple things that make this really excellent. So I picked up this entire package, as you see it right here, for $134, including their mount. Now the mount by itself is like $40–45 depending on where you're buying it from, so that with the optic for $134 is absolutely insane. And to put my money where my mouth is, I bought two of them. So I have two exact ones. This one here actually got a little cheaper. This one here I got from Extreme Tactical while they had it on sale. The whole package for $125. So I paid on average about $130 for these guys. You can still find them for $135 like I got this guy for, but generally speaking, if you go to like Optics Planet or something else, they're going to be selling them closer to $200 with shipping, which is way too much. Or not too much. I definitely think that they're worth it for that money, but you can find them a lot cheaper with free shipping on eBay for $134. You can go to Extreme Tactical and get it for like $120, $125 right now. So currently the price that they're selling for these guys is pretty crazy. I would say it is the best deal on an optic if you need a low power variable zoom. That's not a 1:6. This is a 1:8, though we'll get into all of the technical specifications of it in a little while. So first up, let's go ahead and talk about its features. This is of course a 1:8, which gives you an immense amount of options. It's probably the best overall magnification range for an AR style rifle, unless it's a long range precision AR build like a 20-inch AR-15 or a 24-inch AR-10, something like that, where you're doing a lot of long range or competition shooting or something like that. 1:8 gives you a huge amount of versatility. And in 0 to 500 yards, it's pretty much the best one optic solution that you can get. Now, of course, you can spend more money and get like a 1:10, or even in some cases like a 1:12, which is kind of a nutty range, but you're gonna be spending a lot more money on those sorts of things. And a 1:8 is perfectly acceptable for 0 to 500 yards. Even out further, you can definitely make shots a lot further on steel, man-sized targets, that sort of thing. For long-range precision shooting, you want a little bit more magnification on there when you need to be very precise with where you're putting those bullets at long range. But for 0 to 500, very functional accuracy, 1:8 is absolutely excellent for getting the job done. Bam. Now, as you saw in the intro, I have taken both of these rifles and both of these optics out to 500 yards. Very easy. They're both very easy to get set up and get on target at 500 yards. These are both MOA or sub-MOA rifles with the right ammunition. I use Magtech 168 grain Sierra Match King or Federal Premium. I pretty much interchange them as the same round because they function the same out of both of my guns. So 0 to 500 yards, that's really how I use them. I live in the western US, or sorry, western Washington specifically, and it's really wooded, and so finding a place that you can shoot 500, 700, or even 1,000 yards is very difficult. So you don't need an uber amount of magnification. 1:8 is perfect, and having that 1x, that really low end, allows you to do up close stuff as well as stretch it out to as far as you need to, essentially. Now, something to mention is when you get those very large magnification ranges like 1:8, 1:10, you are going to start sacrificing other things in order to fit that into a single package, and so we are going to talk about some of the downsides of that. Some of the other features of this guy really quick are we do have 36 colors for the reticle, and you have a memory system on the back that you can access by pressing a couple buttons. It's mostly useless. I pretty much just stick to red or green, but some of the colors actually do show up brighter than some of the other ones, so kind of figure out which one shows up best for you and then just set it and forget it. The 36 colors is a gimmick, but it's kind of there, so it's interesting but not all that interesting. It does come with a integral sunshade that's built into the front, so it has an angle to help cut out some of the sun's reflections. Not really sure if it's needed, but it is there. It's not a perfectly straight tube design because this is a 30mm tube with a 28mm objective lens, so it actually does have a little bit wider of a front end than your like 24mm or other things like that on your normal scopes, which is nice that it does have that on there. It does make it look a little bit less clean than your other LPVs, but it still has a good overall look. It is definitely actually a little bit more bulky here in the back end because it has that 36 color module back here where it changes all the colors. The battery compartment is right on top, very easy to get in and out of. It is O-ring sealed and it is waterproof, at least as far as UTG claims. Though I haven't tested it, I have taken it out in rain and haven't had any issues with it, though I generally don't have any issues in just a light rain with many Optic that I've tried. It does have really nice zero resettable turrets. These were extremely easy to get set up and on target. Zeroing with these guys, very, very easy. It comes with all the hardware to reset them. You basically take an Allen key, loosen up the top, pull it, reset it, and then lock it back down, you're good to go. The clicks on here, you can probably hear them, are very, very tactile, very easy, very, very smooth as well, especially for the low price range. Most of the time they're very mushy and they're not too precise feeling, but these are actually really, really nice, really tactile, really audible, have really good feedback on them, and they actually track very accurately. So the other day, a couple days ago, I took it out and I wanted to do a specific tracking test to see how well they actually track, return to zero, how when I adjust them, if they actually adjust accurately. And so just a couple days ago, I went ahead, I took this guy out and I did a tracking test with it. So the ammunition that I was using for it was Wolf ammunition, Wolf 145 grain. It was just what I had on me. I didn't want to take out my really expensive ammo just to do a tracking test with it. So I did the tracking test at 50 yards. I zeroed it, so I had the dial reset to 0, shot a 3-round group, very tight. Again, we're only at 50 yards. And then I raised it 10 MOA, and the group raised 5 inches, shot another 3-round group. I dropped it 20 MOA, and again, it went down about 10 inches this time. Then I raised it back to 0, sent it to the right, 10 MOA, moved over to the right about 5 inches, moved it left 20. Then you had, of course, the group on the other side, nice little group, and then reset both dials, and it was perfectly back in the center, shot another 3-round group, and it pretty much just overlaid right on top of each other. So as far as I can tell, it tracks very accurately. I'm not going to say that it tracks perfectly accurately every single time, but it was incredibly easy at 500 yards. In the videos that I have of this guy, I haven't released a video of that guy out to 500 yards yet, but adjusting them to 0 at 500 yards was very, very easy and very manageable. So I wasn't really worried about, oh, it's not going to track accurately at that distance, and I'm going to throw my 0 off and not be able to find where I'm hitting again. It was very, very easy to adjust the bullets to hit where I wanted to, adjust the reticle, and honestly, the tracking on here is much better, much more accurate than a lot of other scopes that I've had for around the $300 price range. Oh, I thought I missed it there for a second. It takes a long time for it to get there. So now one of the things that you don't get when you throw 1:8 magnification inside of a inexpensive platform is you don't get something that's slim, you don't get something that's lightweight, so you are definitely sacrificing in that way. For instance, this Optic is over 10 inches, it's about 11 inches long, it's fairly bulky on the sides and in the rear here for the 36 color module, which is again kind of a gimmick, not really useful at all. It is heavy at about 21 ounces by itself, so almost 1.5 pounds by itself. Now the mount that it comes with is their true strength platform mount. It's a great 7071, I think it's T6 or T6511 aluminum. It's a very, very strong, durable mount, especially for the money. It has a excellent 3 screw mounting system that locks down into the rail and of course into the side itself. So it's an excellent mount. It hasn't moved whatsoever. This you could probably take a hammer to and you wouldn't be able to budge it at all. So I really like that about it. It does also add about 1.5 inches forward on your scope, so you have a lot of options in terms of where you put it depending on how limited you are for rail space and eye relief. Now, something else about the mount that does kind of go with the overall downside of the system is that it's really heavy. It is a lot of aluminum on there, which does add to its durability and its toughness, but it's also, of course, going to add weight. So it's a question of, do you need to add that much weight to your system for durability or whatnot? You can definitely go with a lot of lighter mounts that are going to save you a couple ounces on the top of your gun, which can or cannot be a big deal depending on your situation. Now, if you're using this as mostly a prone gun, or just shooting out of the back of your truck, or you only put rounds to it every now and again, Probably not a big deal, but it is something to mention that this is not a small, lightweight package. So keep in mind, you are definitely sacrificing the lightweight of your build. So if you already have a heavy AR-10 like this guy, and you throw this optic setup on top, even though it's only a 1:8, it's not a super huge package like a full-size scope. It is a lot of weight on the top of your rifle, so it makes this guy into like a 10.5, 11-pound rifle. So now let's go ahead and talk about some of the other things about this guy that I really like. So another thing that is excellent about this guy is the eye relief. So the eye relief on this guy is 3.5 to 5 inches. So at the 1X, which is what it's at right now, you have an immense range of where you can put your stock, or where you can set it up, what you can be against, where you can be putting your rifle, whatever angle you're at, and still have an excellent field of view. The eye box is also very, very forgiving, especially at 1X. So you can move your head left and right and up and down and still get a decent sight picture out of it. It's of course nothing like a red dot. You're never gonna get that open red dot look, but it's pretty good, especially at 1X. But then of course, when you're flipping it over to 8X, your eye box is going to tighten up a little bit and it's going to move forward actually. So that's when you're gonna get into the 3.5 inch range. And now at the 3.5 inch range, you still do have a good amount of forward and backwards motion, but the left, right, up, down, all that sort of stuff on your eye box really tightens up. But you still do have about 1 inch where you can move your head forwards and backwards and still have a really good sight picture. So for this guy here, depending on different setups, it's really versatile and can go on pretty much anything. So you could throw this on a really short, compact build, a little bit longer, heavier build, and you'll be pretty much good to go. And of course, you do also have a lot of options when it comes to the mount itself and how far you can put the optic forward depending on your situation and your build. There's really only a couple of the things that we need to talk about when it comes to this guy, specifically is the reticle choice. This is of course a second focal plane rifle scope, so if you just have to have a first focal plane, you're going to need to spend a little bit more money. But this guy here is a second focal plane, so that reticle is not going to change size when you cycle through the zoom ranges. This guy here that I have is the BG4 Reticle. It is the most useful reticle that they have. They have like 4 different ones. I want to say they have a mil dash, a mil dot, a circle dot, which is more of a CQB style. So at 8X, it's probably not super useful. And then they have this guy, which is the BG4 Reticle, which is designed, it's a BDC, so it's a ballistic drop compensation reticle. It's really, really open. It has a very crisp 1 MOA center dot, so it's very usable out to 800, 1,000 yards on there, especially if you're shooting at like a 10-inch steel plate like I was. So even at 500 yards, it's still very, very precise, more than precise enough for what I'm doing with it. And on top of that, around your center dot, you have a lot of open space. So it's very crisp, very clear, and very easy to put that center dot right where you need it. Now, on top of that, when you do illuminate your reticle, it only illuminates that center dot. Now, it's not incredibly bright, but in most situations, it will still show up in the day, unless you're like staring into the sun or it's super bright out, then you probably won't be able to pick it up very well. But in most situations, it is going to be slightly illuminated and show up a little bit brighter than the rest of the reticle. And of course, being by itself allows it, in my opinion, to be a little bit faster when it's not quite so cluttered around the area. And then you have also, of course, the windage adjustments on the left and right, and of course on the bottom as well. Now, this one specifically is set up for a 5.56 out to 700 yards, I want to say. Now you can do the calculations and kind of adjust that. So your 400 at this zero is actually 357 with your AR 308, or whatever sort of setup and barrel length that you have. You can plug it in there, and so you can figure out where your actual drops are instead of what they're listed on here for their 62 grain 5.56 out of a 20-inch barrel is what I think they have it set up for. It is of course a little bit more complicated than if the reticle is just set up for 308 to begin with, but it is something that you can do if you're used to doing that or have some time to play around and plug in some numbers. So overall, really like that part about it. Now let's talk about the last thing that really is kind of the make or break for a optic like this. So that's going to be the glass clarity overall, its light transmission, and its edge-to-edge clarity. So let's go ahead and start with the worst offender of that, and that is going to be the edge-to-edge clarity. Now, when you're at 1X like this, you are sacrificing a little bit just because of the limitations of the optic itself. So at 1X, you are going to get a slight fisheye effect around the edges of the optic. So when you're looking through it at 1X, especially at very close ranges like here in just a little room, you're going to notice that the edges really kind of blur and kind of warp the edges a little bit, sorry. And so at very, very, very close range, like within 10 feet, it can be a little bit difficult just because when you're moving the optic around, it's going to kind of warp the whole image. Now the center is very flat, but the edges is where most of that warping occurs. An accurate way to describe it is it kind of looks like you're looking through one of the original GoPros where it's very wide, but it has that huge kind of fisheye effect to it. It's kind of like that, not quite as pronounced, but you are definitely going to notice that around the edge of the reticle at 1x. On top of that, at 1x, it's actually very, very zoomed out, so it's not, of course, a true 1x. There really aren't a lot of true 1x's. I've never actually seen one. There is still some warping and adjustments of the image versus just your naked eye, but this guy is actually very close. So at 100 yards, you're getting 99.5 feet of your field of view, which is actually really good. Anything from 100 to 110 is really good. Anything above 110 is pretty much excellent, and I don't actually know of any optic off the top of my head that does anything more than 120, but 100 for a budget or value optic is really good and a lot better than what you're going to be getting out of a lot of cheaper or even some more expensive optics. So 100 is really good. Anything above 110 is pretty much excellent, and you're pretty much going to be good to go with. So 100 is definitely adequate, and it's definitely enough. It is still kind of a soft 1, so it's more honestly probably a 1.1 with a little bit of a fisheye effect on it. And of course, with that fisheye effect at 1, you do lose some image quality at the edges of the reticle itself, or sorry, not the reticle, the edges of the optic itself. So when you're looking through the glass, you're not going to have perfect edge-to-edge clarity. Now the color on there is really good, it's really accurate. In the center, everything is very bright and crisp, but you are going to lose some of that when you go out to the edges. But when you take this guy out to 8, which is of course its maximum magnification, you are going to minimize the issues and the image becomes completely flat, though you do still have some loss of clarity towards the edges, though it's much more minimal and much harder to tell. Now, when it comes to an 8x versus a 6x, so like a 1:6 versus a 1:8, the 8x is definitely a lot easier at longer ranges. For instance, I took this guy out there with my 16-inch AR-15, which has a 1:6 on it, and this guy here at 500 yards, much easier, much closer, definitely much simpler to put the dot exactly where I want it and take that shot. So overall, when it comes to image quality and clarity on here, though you do lose something on about the outer 10% of the edge of your image, on the inner 90%, which is the vast majority of it that you're going to be using, it is very clear and crisp, and I haven't had any issues with it. It's very comparable with other budget or mid-range optics, so you're definitely not losing a lot there. It's just on the edges where you're going to have a little bit of a loss of clarity and that sort of thing, and especially at 1x it's going to be a little bit more pronounced, but generally through most of the other ranges it's going to be very, very good. Now when it comes to low light performance on this guy, I'm actually very pleased to say that the light transmission on this guy is very, very good. It is a fully multi-coated optic. I believe it's emerald coating on this guy, and it's really, really good. The color on it is very flat. There's not really any tinting to it. So at low light, which in the second half of the intro that you saw, it was pretty much at dusk, so the sun was about to set, pretty dark out, and this guy here performed very, very well. At 1x, pretty much, it's almost exactly like a red dot, just because that center bright, when it's dark outside, is very, very bright and very pronounced, so it makes it very easy to put those rounds exactly where you want it. So when it comes to light transmission, I would say that this guy here is excellent. When it comes to optical clarity, I would say that it is very good in the center, about the center 90% of your image, and you're going to lose something on the outer 10%. You're going to get a little bit of warping at 1x as well, so keep that in mind. But overall, the image quality on this guy, I would say, is very good. Not excellent, not superb. You're definitely not going to compare it to a high-end optic and say, oh, this is pretty much the same. This is definitely does have some downsides. You're going to get that when you spend only $150, $200 on a 1:8, but for what you get and what you pay for, I don't think that there is anything that can beat it for that price point, or even double that price point. So I don't think you can spend $300, $350 and get a better optic than this guy, with of course the same capabilities of 1:8. One last quick thing to mention before we wrap up the video is that I have taken these guys out on about a dozen outings or so, and I have put hundreds and hundreds of rounds to them. Probably not 1,000 yet, but we are reaching that point, and they have functioned very, very well. They have not lost zero. They're very easy to zero with different loadings, especially taking out to longer ranges, doing anything else you need to do with them. So durability on both of these, because I did buy both, has been excellent. On top of that, UTG does have a lifetime warranty. So if you shoot this guy out and it breaks, you can send it in and they will replace it for you for free. So all that being said, I'm going to stick with it. I think that this is the best optic for the money. I don't think you can spend less money and get better. I don't think you can spend like $250, $300 and get a better optic setup than this guy. Now you might be able to find some that are lighter, something that does more for you, but overall this package and the amount of capabilities and versatility that this guy has is excellent for the money, and actually pretty excellent in general. So that's pretty much it for the video, guys, though. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed, and I will of course see you guys in the next one. Peace off.
Hey you. Yeah, you.
What are you still doing here? The video's over. Wait. Why are you still here? Like, share, and subscribe. Or don't. The choice is yours. But if you do subscribe, thanks. And I like pizza. Peace off. So we have 2 in the red, 1 in the bottom. So I threw 2 low on that one, but this guy here, both in the red. All good.